Pursuant to a resolution of the House of 21st of November 2023, we will now proceed with the moving of a condolence motion for Mr Stephen Bromhead, former member for Myall Lakes. I welcome to the chamber family and friends of the former member for Myall Lakes, his wife Sue and children Caroline, Stuart and Trent, sister Bethany and brother Gordon, and sister-in-law Gwyn and niece Amalia. Welcome here, albeit not for circumstances that I would like to be welcoming you. Just before I call the member for Myall Lakes, I'll just say I had a considerable period of time serving here with Stephen Bromhead. And Steve and I always had a good working relationship because he believed that I liked rugby union as much as he did. And Steve started the Parliamentary Friends of Rugby Union and invited me to be his deputy. But I never quite enjoyed it nearly as much as Steve. But it was always good times, and of course his work with charitable groups, particularly the Parliamentary Friends of Lions. And so just at this point, because I won't be speaking later on, I just want to offer my sincere condolences on the loss of Steve, your family member. So with that, I would like to call the member for Myall Lakes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I move that this House, 1, extends its deepest sympathies and sincere condolences to the family of Mr Stephen Bruce Bromhead, who passed away on 16th of March 2023. Acknowledges Mr Bromhead's years of service as the member for Myall Lakes from 2011 to 2023 and his roles as Parliamentary Secretary for Regional Housing and Regional Transport and Roads and as the Nationals Whip. Recognises with gratitude his contribution to regional New South Wales. I note, Mr Speaker, that Stephen was also the Chairman of the Legislative Review Committee, Member of the Legal Affairs Committee, President of the New South Wales Parliamentary Lions Club and Chairman of the Parliamentary Friends of Rugby Union Group. I too would like to acknowledge members of Stephen's family that are present today in the public gallery, Stephen's wife Sue and his children Caroline, Stuart and Trent, sister Bethany and brother Gordon and sister-in-law Gwyn and niece Amalia. I welcome you all. I offer my deepest condolences to Stephen's family, his friends, and to everyone that was lucky enough to work alongside him during his 12 years as a member for Myall Lakes. His absence is felt here every day. Stephen was a passionate family man who often shared stories and happy memories with us in the office. And I recall a particular memory when Stephen dressed as a pirate at the delight of his grandsons, and the vision of Stephen with an eye patch and a toy parrot on one shoulder, giving an almighty R to this day still brings a smile to my face. Stephen Bromhead, affectionately known as Brommy, spent his entire life serving and caring for people. In every profession, he made an outstanding contribution to the service of his community. Stephen started nursing in Parramatta Psychiatric Hospital before completing his certificate in geriatric nursing, and after working as a registered nurse from 1974 to 1979, Brommy joined the New South Wales Police Force. He was a dedicated officer, very highly regarded, and while stationed in Forbes Street in Sydney, he was selected as a probationary constable for the Commissioner's Honour Guard. At the beginning of 1981, Stephen was transferred to Taree Police Station, and the Myall Lakes became his forever home. In 1986, Stephen commenced studying for his legal qualifications, undertaking the Solicitors Mention Board via correspondence through Sydney University, at the same time training and studying to be a detective, whilst also working in the police force. Such was his work that Stephen was commended by judges in numerous trials for his dedication to duty and his care of victims, particularly in child sexual assault cases. In 1992, he left the force and joined Walker Smith Solicitors and became partner in 1993. In 2007, Stephen started Bromhead Legal. An openly confessed rugby tragic, Stephen's contribution to local rugby is nothing short of outstanding. Initially playing rugby for the Old Bar Clams Rugby Union Club, he became the Vice President in 1986 and the President in 1990. It was this year he also became the Vice President of the Mid-North Coast Rugby Union Zone and naturally went on to become the President the following year. Brommy was a founding member of the Manning River Rats and the Foster Tuncurry Dolphins, and one of his proudest achievements was changing the Foster Tuncurry Rugby Club's culture to focus more on families. Now I'd like to indulge the House for just a moment and share a story about my first week starting for Stephen in his legal firm. And I was at the front reception and he approached me with a race guide and he said, "How do you feel about horse racing?" And I said, "Well, I'm not opposed to it." And this served as the green light for Brommy to give me a full introduction into the annual race night fundraiser, to which then I was then in charge of finding the jockeys, fixing the odds, picking the horses' names and the colours. And it was this fundraiser that assisted immensely in the construction of the Dolphins Rugby Clubhouse. And I have no doubt that the memory of Stephen standing proudly at the door of that clubhouse, the crisp effervescence of his Diet Saxby's ginger beer opening as he watched the mighty Dolphins take to the field, will be cherished by many forever. Joining the National Party in 1986, Stephen was a fierce advocate for regional New South Wales. He served as a Vice Chairman for the Electorate Council and Chairman of the Foster Branch, among many other various positions. Elected to Parliament in 2011, his commitment to the people of the Myall Lakes was to ensure that they always received their fair share. That just because you live in the country, you shouldn't miss out on the best healthcare, the best roads, and the best education. His commitment to the people of the Myall Lakes never faltered. So dedicated to his community that when receiving a visit from the then Deputy Premier Paul Toole as a friend during his illness, he was asked, "Mate, if there's anything you need, please ask," to which he replied, "Yes, the public hospital for Foster." In his electorate office, which I now use as my electorate office, there is a large brick wall, and this is called Brommy's Wall. It is filled with successful projects and achievements over the past 12 years. Now, Stephen would often come into the office and sit on the lounge, and he'd look at the wall, and we'd all discuss the next project, the next school or community group that would need help, upgrades to the Manning Base Hospital, and those too, in time, would make their way to the wall, because Brommy would never stop. Once he had resolved an issue or helped with a project, he would be on to the next, always looking at ways to improve his community. Every part of the Myall Lakes was his home, and he loved it all. But you don't have to look at his beloved wall of achievement still holding pride of place in our office to see the impact that Stephen has had across the Myall Lakes over the 12 years as the member. For it's all around as you travel throughout the electorate. The sporting fields, the community halls, the men's sheds, Foster and Taree police stations, Taree courthouse, the highway, the schools. It's in the conversations you have with everyone that you meet. They have all been touched by his kindness and generosity. His willingness to always stop to have a chat because he cared, because he was a genuine good bloke who always put people before politics. Stephen was a true champion of the region, a friend and mentor to myself and to so many others in this place. Now, it would be truly remiss of me when speaking about Stephen to not mention his proud Scottish heritage. Often cited wearing his custom-made Bromhead tartan tie with pride, he would share many joyous stories of trips abroad to Scotland with the rugby club, and more notably, his aversion to dressing full regimental at the annual Bonnie Wingham Scottish Festival. My greatest joy was surprising Stephen last year at his thank you dinner with the Manning Valley Pipes and Drums, a community Scottish pipe band that played all Brommy's favourites and delighted at his request for encore after encore. The bagpipes have never sounded more sweeter since. I feel incredibly grateful each and every day for having met and having known Stephen Bromhead. His extensive service to the community leaves a lasting legacy, and while he may not be here in person, he sits softly on my shoulder and will always be remembered fondly. I thank his family for allowing us all to share in his life. Vale Stephen Bromhead.
I thank the member for Myall Lakes. I call Government Deputy Whip and member for Lismore.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'm honoured to speak to this condolence motion of our parliamentary colleague, the late Stephen Bromhead, and I pay respect to him and his colleagues, particularly his National Party colleagues in this place and from the other place, and to his wife, Sue, and through you, your children, grandchildren, and all the family members here today. When I found out that Stephen had been a nurse, I realised why I found him to be so caring and gracious. And I sensed in him a gentleness and a courteousness in how he treated people in this place and also in the electorate. Given where I live, we share TV, media, so I would know him through the media as well as in this place. And he was a fierce advocate for regional and rural New South Wales, but also he always did it forcefully but gracefully and cared deeply for his community, and that was evident in this place and also in other places that I got to see. And when he was whip, I know that he was quite a ferocious whip, as you have to be sometimes, and but always done with the best will towards all people in this place. And I was quite amazed to see what he'd packed into his all too short life. A nurse, a police officer, a solicitor, a politician, a parliamentarian, and also a community person. And I think first and foremost, he was a community person, and that showed. And his service, I only know a smattering of it, but it's extensive. With all the reading that I've done, what I saw Stephen do, he was in everything, but he also started everything. It wasn't just that he was in everything, he was a doer. He started things, he made things happen in the community. And when I looked up some of the things that he did, president of Mid Coast Rugby, and the speaker spoke about their shared love. I think Stephen's was the biggest love for rugby union. I obviously don't have that same passion for rugby union that Stephen had, but I understand, it was a great love of his. And when I heard the member for Myall Lakes, Tanya, talking just now about the horse racing, that's one love we do share. I grew up in a racing family, so but not the rugby. And look, I read that he was founder of Manning Great Lakes Traffic Offenders Program, councillor, Greater Taree City Council, chairman of the Tourism Board, president of the Aquatic Association, and president of Old Bar Rugby Union Club, and I'm sure he was very proud of that, the Manning River vice president of the Rugby Union Club, the Mid-North Coast Zone Rugby Union. And you can't live in our area and not know, of all of these things. Delegate to Country Rugby Union. He was active in Chamber of Commerce, the Taree Racecourse, the Foster Tuncurry Rugby Union Club, and Hunter Community Legal Centre, but a few things, and I know there was a lot more. I admit that I do feel more akin to members who represent rural and regional areas, irrespective of parties, because people who come from the rural and regional areas are first and proudly sort of want to represent the region. And I know that being a Nationals, that was what he wanted to do, make sure that rural and regional areas, country areas, got a better deal. And I feel that bond with members who do come from the rural and regional areas, and felt that with Stephen in this place, and perhaps that's one of my biases about rural and regional New South Wales. And I liked how he was called Brommy, and that is what I call, it's very blokesy, but it's good blokesy, and we like that. And he was always called, Brommy. And by all accounts, the few years that I served here with him, he was generous, kind, fierce advocate. He did work. He made a difference. He made a difference in his community. and his legacy is long. And I say to his family that he was well respected, well regarded by everyone in this place, sorely missed, and God rest his soul.
I call the Leader of the Nationals, the member for Dubbo. And
Thank you,
the member for Dubbo, could I just take a moment to recognise in the gallery, and someone important to yourself, I'm sure, the Honourable Duncan Gay. So welcome, Duncan. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker, and I'd like to make a contribution on a personal level, but first of all, as the leader of the New South Wales Nationals, a party that Steve Bromhead proudly represented in his community, as we all know. The Nats was a huge part of Bromy's life. He absolutely loved being a part of the Nationals, and we absolutely loved him. So it's important for everyone to know that he will continue to be loved, to be remembered, and to be honoured by the New South Wales Nationals. Personally, I only knew Brommy from 2019 when I actually got elected to this place, but I do feel like I got to know a whole lot about the type of person he was, the things that mattered to him, to his family and to the community. And I'd also like to acknowledge Sue and all of the members of the family that are here today. Thank you so much for coming, and those that will maybe watch this later on. You were the love of his life, and that's important to know. I just want to reflect back on the first conversation I ever had with Brommy, and we've heard about the beautiful, caring nature. We've also heard that he could be a little bit gruff as the whip. So my first conversation with Brommy was after I got elected, and he was doing the ring around to say, to tell us what was to come. So the conversation went a little bit like this, me answering the phone. Hello, Dougal here. Yeah, Steve Bromhead here. Just letting you know, party room on whatever the date was, be at Parliament 9 o'clock. Oh, okay. And I went to ask him a question, and of course, beep, 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 beep. It's like, oh, right, okay. So I sort of thought, oh, should I ring him back? I left it a day. I rang him back the next day and said, oh, Steve, sorry, I just wanted to check, because I had no idea. I didn't know how to book a flight or where to stay or how do we get into Parliament, none of that stuff, because Parliament hadn't started in that year yet. So that was the extent of our first chat. That's where it ended. But I think at the end of the day, the memories that stick with me are the ones of a really weird but unique time, and the way that many of us, and some of us that will speak about him today, got to know him in more recent times was during COVID, bizarre as it may sound. We ended up during the COVID times not being allowed to all be in here at the same time. So we often had question time or chamber time that we weren't allowed to be here, so we'd be up in our offices. During question time, there was a group of us that every single day would gather, spaced, of course, completely spaced, and we would watch the TVs together. There would be popcorn, and there would be lots of great morale boosting. We'd be yelling at the TV and carrying on. Brommy came to every single one of those. And for a lot of us, and there was some other newer members like myself who hadn't really been here before, but that's where we got to know the bloke who loved rugby and could spin a yarn, loved to spin a yarn. That's where we got to find out the real Brommy, and it was a weird time because we weren't expecting to get to know people better, but we did. We got to know each other better. But Brommy was one of those ones who I think really relished the opportunity to, particularly with newer members like me, to share some of his experiences and the memories. And the memories were wild and wide-ranging as well. And look, one of the ones, and I think a couple of people will probably mention this, I wasn't here at the time this happened, but his memory of the day that he was trying to get the jump in the chamber and his leg went off like a gun. Now, I'll be honest, it makes me feel queasy thinking about it. It's disgusting. But I used to ask him to tell me about it occasionally, because just the way he would tell it just was great. And I'd say, no, stop, I can't. And he'd tell it and I'd laugh, and it was sick. But he loved it, and he loved telling it, and we loved hearing it. That was the sort of thing that happened. And look, there were lots of memories as things were happening during a question time. Somebody would say something and he'd say, "Oh, did I ever tell you the time about that time that this happened?" And we'd be like, "Oh, no." And off he'd go. I think as a newbie, myself and a few of the others certainly had lots to learn from somebody like him. And I think for myself, and I think a few of the others, we felt like we almost helped re-energise him a little bit as well after that period where things had all changed during COVID and we were finding a new vibe together as a different group. And we got enjoyment in him being part of our little group. And I think he got a lot out of that as well. And we related to him in a completely new way and he related to us in a different way. And I saw that, I felt that, and I also really missed that. There were plenty of other things that he talked about, of course, as a nurse, as a policeman, as a detective, as a solicitor, all of the things he'd seen and done. It was pretty amazing, and some of them we cannot mention in this place. And of course, there was the rugby. He'd always happily talk rugby, good, bad, indifferent. He would happily talk rugby. And the other thing, the national anthem. He would happily have the national anthem back in every single school, every single day. And I remember having, and if you wanted to get him going, you could toss that one out. That'd fire him up for the day for sure. There were quite a few hopes and dreams that Brommy spoke to me about as we got to know each other towards the end, and some were work related, but mostly it was family. The future, Sue and family related basically, and he is missing out on those opportunities. Brommy was the quintessential Nats member. There's no doubt about that. As we've heard, he was absolutely determined to make sure that the people of his Myall Lakes electorate got their fair share, and in fact all of regional New South Wales, but his focus of course was Myall Lakes. He stood up, he fought hard, he fought for a lot of things, as we've heard from Tanya. Health facilities was the big one that he wanted to leave a lasting legacy on, and it will be part of his lasting legacy. But it wasn't just in his part of the world that Brommy was highly thought of. He was respected, and as we've heard today, he was respected by people, by every single person that I can think of in this place, right throughout Parliament, and that's important to know as well. As we know, Brommy fought until the very end, and he does leave an incredible legacy, and I personally feel like I've benefited from knowing him. So mate, thank you for everything you've done for us. You will continue to be dearly missed. Thank you.
Well, I thank the member for Dubbo, and I call the member for Coffs Harbour to make a contribution to his condolence motion.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Look, I too had only had the honour of knowing Steve Bromhead for a very short time. But when I was elected in 2019, I learned very quickly that Brommy was someone who I could trust and someone who I knew had our best interests at heart. And I also got to learn very quickly that Brommy was a fighter. Long before entering politics, we'd all heard the stories of that MP down south who won his seat with a 30% margin from a hospital bed. He had a car accident 2 weeks before the election and still won with the nearly 30% two-party preferred. And then obviously Dougal told the story a little bit better than me, but that story about him breaking his leg in question time, I think we got him nearly once a month to tell us that story again and again. Look, he had as Janelle mentioned, he had a really diverse career path all the way through, a nurse, a police officer, a solicitor. He also had really active roles within the Lions Club, and he's still on the fireground work with the Rural Fire Service, and of course his various rugby clubs during his time. It shaped him into a bloke you could have a conversation with just about any topic. And you know, a lot of the time his conversations were really long. Other times, as was mentioned, he could be very economical with his words. And I think I did get an identical phone call to Dougal as well. And I rang Fraser. I said, Fraser, I think he's got the shits with me. I said, I think he's upset with me. And he said, no, that's all right. You'll be fine. Just ring him back. And I did. I rang him back the next day. And, you know, then we had probably a half an hour chat about all the things that we needed to know. In the party room, certainly Brommy was a very respected senior voice, someone whose opinion carried a lot of weight and someone who had the respect of all of his peers. And from 2019 until he got sick, he also cooked our Monday night barbecue. So he was also responsible for cooking that meat to perfection. And look, as an MP, especially someone away from home, what a great way to start the week. And he really brought that family atmosphere into our National Party barbecues. He was a fantastic role model for new MPs and was always ready to offer some help, a helping hand, or offer some advice. In his valedictory speech last year, Brommy touched on the legacy that he's leaving behind in his electorate, and the Myall Lakes of 2023 looks very different to the Myall Lakes of 2011 when he was elected. I know he took pride in the projects and the funds that that made his community a better place. And we know that through his hard work and his advocacy, and he was able to leave behind an amazing legacy, including passing the baton on to the new member for Myall Lakes, Tanya Thompson. So to Sue, Caroline, Stuart and Trent, Bethany, Gordon and Gwyn and Amalia, and to his many, many friends, we are truly sorry for your loss. His sudden illness was a total shock to so many of us, and he was taken away from you far too soon. We remember Brommy for his achievements, not just for his achievements and the roles he played, but for the person he was. Kind-hearted, steadfast, and genuinely committed to making a difference. His memory will continue to inspire all of us in this place and remind us of the impact that one individual can have on the lives of so many. Brommy, your legacy will live on in the halls of this Parliament, in the hearts of the Myall Lake community, and in the memories of all of us who had the privilege of knowing you. Rest in peace, mate. Your spirit, dedication, and your commitment to serving others will never be forgotten. Yeah.
Well, I thank the member for Coffs Harbour, and I invite the member for Gosford to make a contribution on this condolence motion.
Thank you, Mr Temporary Speaker. It is with great sadness that I rise to make a contribution to the loss of this Parliament, Stephen Bromhead, and I send my condolences to all of Stephen's family, his wife Sue and family, and supporters and community representatives, and also members of the National Party. I'm sure have worked very closely with Brommy, who was someone who was always a fantastic advocate for the regions. As a regional MP, you know people are standing up there a little bit further away from the city fighting for the best outcomes for their community. So it is, but I rise today because he not only left a legacy in the Parliament in his community, but he also left a legacy as the president of the New South Wales Parliamentary Lions Club. And it was in huge shoes that I had to step into when I was offered the next presidency, because he really has made a difference. And I think Stephen was an absolute change maker in his community, and to make those changes in your own life is really an indication that you're not scared to get up and have a crack at something new. And he really took on the Parliamentary Lions Club to make the Lions Club within the Parliament is also a mean feat, because we have friends of everything else, but we've actually got an active Parliamentary Lions Club. And I think on behalf of Stephen Bromhead, there's a few members in the place that need to renew their membership. But he did, and I came in and it was sort of like a relief. COVID hit and we didn't have to do the tens of thousands of dollars fundraiser. So there will be a fundraiser. I just need to say that Warren Kirby's taken over the presidency. But in Stephen's legacy, the fundraising standard that he set in the Parliamentary Lions Club is really significant, and it was really a delight to come behind Stephen as the previous fundraiser for the Spinal Cord Injury Australia, and he chose organisations to make a difference in people's lives, because he really was a beautiful human. I just need to say, not only is the legacy in the actions he took, there's also a lot of paraphernalia, as you might know, Sue, that came with the Lions Club, and my cupboard is still filled with lots of flagpoles and bits and pieces from the Parliamentary Lions Club with raffle tickets, etc. But he really was a very generous human that believed in doing greater good much beyond himself, and I just know that in losing Brommy from the Parliament, mesothelioma is something that nobody wishes upon anybody, and I think it's a reminder that this can happen to everybody, and we've got to look out for ourselves and others. But I'd just like to say thank you and veil Stephen Bromhead. You've left a really important mark on this place.
Well, I thank the member for Gosford, and I call the member for Willoughby to make a contribution to this condolence motion.
Thank you, and it's a great privilege to be able to do so. Brommy was a really special bloke, we all know that. I've got great fond memories of him and with him. In a sense, we came in at the same time. He was a new member in 2011. I was a young chief of staff to a minister. Just over here. He was our favourite backbencher, and we were his favourite ministerial office. And we used to chat a lot. He'd come and have barbecues with us. He was a fierce fighter on behalf of his community. There were, of course, in Myall Lakes, a range of issues in the fair trading portfolio, from retirement villages to caravan parks and strata and so on and so forth. There are some people in public life who are just such decent, noble, honourable figures, and he was certainly one of those, without a doubt. So we miss him. His love of rugby, of course, always shone through. I always thought that he looked a bit like Simon Poitevin, actually, who was a great Wallabies player. I thought there was a slight physical resemblance. They were born within a year of one another. Poito, a great flanker and figure for the Wallabies who did great things, including in the Rugby World Cup. And so I think Brommy had liked that comparison, that parallel, if you like. And certainly, reflecting on rugby, he was a great team player, Stephen Bromhead, a great selfless contributor to the cause more broadly. He and I shared, we sort of became mates actually, which was more, it just sort of followed naturally. We both had a background in the law, love of rugby, sort of both came in, I guess, at a similar age and stage, and we kept in touch. He sent me a lovely note after I lost 2 pre-selections, which was extremely good of him. He sent me an even more lovely note when I won a pre-selection and got into this place, and he was just a terrific bloke. He was also an outstanding advocate for local people in the Myall Lakes. So we've got some dear family friends up there, and they had a really difficult time during COVID, including a loss of one of them, and they had this situation in which the son was likely unable to get to his dad's funeral. But with Steve's help, we made it happen, and that meant so much to that family and a lot to me and my family as well. And for that, we thank him. So to Steve's family, thank you. We miss him and we salute him. God rest his soul.
Well, I thank the member for Willoughby. I call the member for Bathurst to make a contribution to this condolence motion.
Well, thank you, Mr Speaker, and I do actually stand in this House today, and I'm actually proud to be able to be a part of a condolence motion that acknowledges a much-loved mate, someone who was a colleague, someone who was a passionate advocate for the people of Myall Lakes. And Brommy, to all of us, was a friend. To all of us, he was a beacon of warmth, someone who would actually give us unwavering support. He was someone who had an infectious smile, but he could also brighten up the darkest of days. And his laughter echoed through the halls of this Parliament, capturing our hearts, leaving a lasting imprint of joy. As a mate, he showed sincere loyalty. He stood for what he believed in through thick and thin, a companion who touched so many lives. And I'd like to acknowledge his family here today, Sue and the family. And I also want to say to all of you, I've stood by you during those difficult and dark days, but you put the hard yards in. Just that the commitment, the support, the tough times that you had to deal with, I commend you. And I sincerely say thank you for looking after our friend during that difficult time as well. I also want to say that Stephen Bromhead, I was fortunate enough that we actually came into this place at the same time. He was part of the class of national MPs that entered the New South Wales Parliament in 2011. and he was determined to make a difference. And he didn't disappoint. Brommy understood better than most what a privilege it was to serve your community. That when people put their faith in you, you represent them. You take up the fight on their behalf, and you do what you need to do to help them. And when that fight is won, you don't stop. You go straight on to the next battle. Brommy understood that as a state MP, you have a tremendous opportunity to drive change and do good, and that you can't afford to waste a second. And he didn't. Brommy served in this place for 3 terms and 12 years as the member for Myall Lakes. He made more than 1,400 speeches to Parliament, and he secured hundreds of millions of dollars in funding for his electorate. But his legacy is not one that can be measured in numbers. It's a legacy that will be felt right across this electorate for decades to come, by the community groups whose dreams he helped make a reality, by the next generation of nippers training at local surf clubs that he fought to see upgraded, and of course by patients seeking healthcare closer to home. No one fought harder to ensure the people of that region got the health facilities they deserve. Brommy fought, as we've heard, for the upgrades of the Manning Base Hospital, for ambulance stations at Foster and Old Bar. And as a friend, as a minister, and as a Deputy Premier, you would hear Brommy's booming voice in this place. But it was always because he wanted to see the needs of his community being met. And that's exactly what he never stopped doing. And one of the things that I was amazed when I had the opportunity to go to Myall Lakes is just talking to different community groups, whether it's the Manning Valley BMX Club, just to see the investment that was made into that facility, or to go to the Foster Tennis Club. And what do they say about Brommy? What an amazing man. Thank you, Brommy, for everything that you have done for our community and for our club. The Foster Tuncurry Dolphins Rugby Club. Thank you, Brommy, not only what you did for us, but also for the entire community. To the Manning River Rugby Club. They knew that he was a staunch rugby man, but they also said he always had the best interest of the community at heart. I think this goes to show the testament of the man. Somebody who we all know in this place made a difference. I'll miss hearing his voice, and I'll miss hearing him rip into someone when he stood here at this lectern in the Parliament on an issue that he was so passionate about. I'll miss seeing him behind the Barbie in the Nats party room, because Brommy would always be leading the way. And it wasn't, as I've said before, it wasn't about the snags, of course. It was about knowing that people actually came from right across the state in regional areas, but by coming together, it was about keeping people together. And Brommy was the one that ensured that that remained and that happened. It's never easy to say goodbye to a good man, even when you know it's coming. And I remember distinctly on those occasions, of dropping in to visit Brommy and Sue and the family at their home. And there were tough times. There was times when I stood there and I saw the emotions of a man. But I saw the man that was proud of what he had also achieved. And I remember there, sitting with Stephen on a number of occasions, where as well he'd fall asleep when I was there with him. So, but he was tired. But he was a proud man. And I know Duncan Gay here as well, a previous minister, he'd also know that he was a pain in the backside at times, because he would not give up on things. He would actually push, for things because he knew they made a difference. When I would go to their home, we would talk about campaigns, we would laugh about old times, and we'd talk about others in this place. I also do want to acknowledge Chris Minns, the Premier, as well, because I will make the point that on the day of Brommy's passing, he was the first person that rang me as well to actually lend his condolences on behalf of the opposition at the time. And I will acknowledge the decency there from the opposition leader in that time. I remember Brommy joked in his valedictory speech to Parliament last year, and I've said that he had two speeches. He said he had a short one and a long one. The short one, he said, was thank you, and the long one was thank you very much. I think his service as a registered nurse, as a police officer, as a volunteer firefighter, and as an outstanding MP has well and truly earned him the long speech. So Brommy, as a friend, on behalf of everyone in this Parliament, I say thank you very much. And we will all miss you, but we also thank you for the difference that you have made in our lives and in the lives of those people living in the Myall Lakes area.
Well, I thank the member for Bathurst. I call the member for Heffron to make a contribution to this condolence motion.
Mr Acting Speaker, on behalf of the Government, the Premier and the Labor Party, I rise to acknowledge the service of Stephen Bruce Bromhead, known to all of us as Brommy, during his 12 years in this place as a member for Myall Lakes. I also pay tribute to the selfless contribution he made to the community outside of this place, both in his personal life and his professional career. Labor members of this place, present and past, extend our deepest sympathies to Brommy's family and indicate that we all who serve with Brommy miss him. I thank and welcome those friends and family who are able to be with us in this place where Brommy dedicated so much of his service. His working career was typified by his selfless public service for his local community and for the people of New South Wales. He became a registered nurse with the New South Wales Health Service in 1974 before becoming a constable of police, then a detective in the New South Wales Police Force. In fact, Brommy's association with the New South Wales Parliament started decades before his elected service, not as a political staffer, but as a police officer serving on guard duty during the Rand government. In 1991, he turned to practicing law, working as a solicitor and consulting for the Hunter Community Legal Centre. He was a very well-known community figure long before his entry into Parliament, serving as the founder of the Manning Great Lakes Traffic Offenders Program, a councillor on the Greater Taree City Council, chairman of the local tourism board, president of the Aquatic Association, and president of Foster Chamber of Commerce. Brommy was elected to State Parliament with the support of the National Party in 2011, and his dedication to the people of the electorate of Myall Lakes became immediately clear, not only to those whom he encountered within his electorate, but to all members of this House. From his inaugural speech onwards, he was passionate about improving services for his community. In his inaugural speech, he highlighted the importance of convenient and accessible regional health facilities and spoke about the need for adequate police staffing in the Manning Great Lakes Local Area Command. These were causes he championed throughout his time in Parliament. Never did a moment go by in this House when Brommy didn't advocate the need to support police, nor the service police performed not only in his local community but throughout the state of New South Wales. He continued his passion for the community and volunteerism, not just as a parliamentarian. He served a variety of roles within this place, including Parliamentary Secretary for Regional Transport and Roads, Parliamentary Secretary for Regional Housing, President of the New South Wales Lions Club for 10 years, Chair of the New South Wales Parliamentary Friends of Rugby Union, Deputy Chair of the Friends of the Prevention of Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault group in Parliament. Like many of us, he carried the past experiences of his professional life with him into this bear pit. From 2015 to 2019, Stephen Bromhead was the National Party whip, and no doubt his experience in law and order, but particularly as a policeman, came in handy as part of that role. As somebody close to sporting and community clubs in my own electorate, I'd like to acknowledge Bromy's extensive engagement with his own local sporting community. I've come to learn that he was especially proud of his contributions to his beloved Foster Tuncurry Rugby Club, of which he became a life member in 2011. He was also Vice President of the Manning River Rugby Club, a founding member of the Harrington Rugby and Wollumba Rugby Clubs, and even President of Mid-North Coast Rugby Union. He knew the incredible role that sporting clubs play in fostering a sense of community by bringing people together. He did not hide from the challenges his community faced, nor did he dwell on his victories. He instead, with humility and grace, sought the best possible outcomes for the people of the Mid-North Coast in accordance with the values he shared with his constituency. His presence in this place is missed by everybody who served with him and across the Myall Lakes area. He is sorely missed to us all. May he rest in peace.
Well, I thank the member for Heffron, and I call the member for Cronulla and Leader of the Opposition to make a contribution to this condolence motion.
Thank you, Mr Acting Speaker. I rise to contribute to the condolence motion for Stephen Bromhead and extend my condolences and thoughts to all his family, including those here today, his wife Sue, his children Caroline, Stuart and Trent, his sister Bethany, his brother Gordon and sister-in-law Gwyn and niece Amalia. Both Stephen and I entered Parliament in the class of 2011. It was an exciting time. It was a unique time, a unique privilege to be part of a new government. And that doesn't happen often in this state. We were full of spirit, excitement, and a determination to turn the state around. Stephen came to this place as a former grazier, nurse, detective, barrister, active in his community, including rugby union, determined to deliver for his electorate. What an extraordinary combination. What an extraordinary life experience. And his service here stands as an example of a model parliamentarian. Those who come with life experience and a hunger to deliver for their communities. In his inaugural speech, Stephen spoke of the tranquility of Myall Lakes, the coastal beaches and the waterways contrasted with the hinterland. In his own words, Myall Lake is internationally renowned as Australia's water playground, and Stephen nominated health and roads as key priorities for his term ahead. The redevelopment of the Manning Base Hospital and upgraded roads and bridges across the electorate are some of the highlights that stand as a testament to Stephen's advocacy and his record as a member of this place. He also served for 10 years as president of the New South Wales Parliamentary Lions Club. So it's appropriate, in recognition of Stephen's outstanding service, that I close my contribution in invoking the Lions motto of "We serve."
Well, I thank the member for Cronulla. I call the member for Terrigal to make a contribution to this condolence motion.
Thank you very much, Mr Temporary Speaker. Look, I rise to make a brief contribution with regards to our lost friend. I was lucky enough to be elected into this place in 2015, but Stephen's character I actually knew about before actually even arriving in this building, because we happen to have some mutual friends, Jennifer Green and her husband Wayne Cornell. So before I even got elected in this place, they said, "Oh, when you go in there, you'll have to catch up with Brommy." And I said, "Who's this Brommy guy?" And so I had to do a little bit of research, and everyone was talking about Steve. I'm thinking, where's this Brommy guy? I'm looking for Brommy. And the first time I met Brommy, I was taken aback because I'd done a bit of research and found out he was a nurse and a police officer and a lawyer. Had a very varied career before entering this place. And then you see the mountain of a man that Brommy is. And I thought about all those patients that saw Brommy coming towards them as a nurse, thinking, oh my gosh, look at this chap. And it really typified, though, the gentleness and spirit of Brommy. And I was, again, a newbie in this place. And shortly after being elected, I had the honour of being appointed as a temporary speaker. And some of the greatest pleasures of being in this place are listening to private member statements. And I have sat in this chamber and listened to Brommy's private member statements and the passion and the love and the care that he put into Myall Lakes. And there was not one organisation that he didn't fight for, champion, stand up for, represent. And some of the most moving moments, I suppose, that I have seen, Brommy walked in one night and started talking about what had happened with the fires. And when you see a chap the size of Brommy break down in tears because of what he has seen and the pain in which his community had gone through, but he stood with them side by side through every one of those moments. And that was a true testament to the mountain of the man. But to see that person reduced to tears showed the compassion and the love that he put into his community from one end to the other. The other thing I also noticed about Brommy when he did his speeches, there were two speeches. There was the one where he'd come in with a newspaper clipping and the one where he didn't. And you knew when he didn't, he was going to rip into somebody. He didn't need the notes because he'd already worked out what he was going to do and who the target was going to be. And it was really interesting. You knew the newspaper was a mild-mannered congratulations to the Pie Club or whatever it might have been in Myall Lakes. They've done an outstanding job that week. But woe betide the person who didn't have the written notes. And I'm sure Tanya used to watch them from the electoral office. And he would literally tear him. And again, but with the energy and the fight that he knew he had to deliver for his people. And as a regional MP, I watched in awe of the way this chap fought for his region. And I thought, this is the sort of MP that all regional MPs should be. And I took so much away from the way he fought for everything. And, you know, I don't know how many times he's spoken about the Manning Base Hospital in this room. Some of his proudest moments were delivering for his community. And I took away a lot of learning from watching Brommy and what he had done for his community. And he really is a quintessential caring politician. Nothing was too small, nothing was too big. And that is why he will forever be remembered in this place. Not only for the dollars he delivered, but the support, the kindness, the compassion. I think everybody in Myall Lakes has had the privilege of having been supported by Brommy in one form or another. Said those fires that ripped through the electorate were harrowing. And as I said, I'll never forget the time he stood at that lectern, reduced to tears, because again, that was the compassion of the man. I'll also never forget my enrolment into the Parliamentary Lions Club. I don't actually think it was optional. He just said, Crouch, it's okay, I know if you can't make it, just give us the money. And, the funds that Brommy was able to secure as the president of the Parliamentary Lions Club were astronomical, which sort of fitted with the character of the man. He was delivering hundreds of millions of dollars for his electorate and squeezing thousands of dollars out of politicians. And that, again, is a true testament to Brommy. I, of course, will never forget the day then I was promoted to government whip. And, again, Brommy was one of the first to congratulate me and say, good luck. Firm but fair, Crouchy, firm but fair. And I've always tried to follow the example he had set when being the National Party whip. Firm but fair. But more often than not, I would walk into the whip's office and there he would be, lounged out on the lounge suite, all 6 foot, whatever it is of him, usually wearing the I always used to call it the McBrommy tartan tie. And he would give me a bit of advice from the afternoon how it was going. But I respected that, and he did it in a positive way. I also made the mistake of once asking him about the leg, and I was told in graphic detail the story of how he broke his leg, and at that point I wished I'd actually never asked. So we've all heard the story, we've all heard about the crack, but again, he was able to reflect on that in good humour, and that again are the things that we will all remember in this place of that beautiful man, and the commitment he made to everybody else, putting himself second. The other thing I have to remember, Sue, and I've got to tell you this, there's a photo of the two of you walking on the beach, which he proudly had on his Facebook page. And I bailed him up. I said, mate, that is one of the best retirement village pictures I think I've ever seen in my life. And he said, I said, are you getting ready for this? He said, really? I said, mate, Sue looks great. You, not so much. But it's a beautiful photo of the two of you walking together. And it is, again, a sign of the love that the two of you have shared. Thank you for sharing out him with the people of New South Wales since 2011. The people of Myall Lakes are so much better off. They're also in great hands in the future, as we know. Thank you to your entire family for being here. Thank you for giving him to us for so long. We will miss him terribly, but his legacy will live on for forever. Vale Brommy.
Well, I thank the member for Terrigal. I call the member for Tamworth to make a contribution to this condolence motion.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To Sue and family, well, it's an honour. It really is, and a privilege to make a contribution to our mate Stephen Bromhead. And it's been nice. It's been nice the last hour, just to sit, enjoy, soak up Brommy, the man we knew, the man we loved, the man we got to know over the years. We started in this house together in 2011. And as it turns out, we spent 8 years together on level 12, next to each other. We had neighbouring rooms. So for 8 years, yes, yes. And it was 8 years that I will treasure forever. We spent more time in each other's rooms than we did in our own. He was wonderful at organising events and roping people into organising events. Kevy, come in, I got an idea. Ah, shit, Brommy, what now? You know, and so it would go on and on. But it was amazing, and those 8 years that we had next to each other, I treasure. And it was only when I moved floors after those 8 years, Brommy moved into my room, and he was there till the end. So it was, and you know, it's still walking along level 12. I walk past there often, and he just springs to mind, and he stays in our thoughts, which is amazing. Was there anything that Brommy couldn't do? Was there anything that Brommy wasn't involved in? Was there any organisation Brommy hadn't fundraised for? And even with the former members' night, and I acknowledge Duncan Gay in the gallery, Brommy, you organised the former members' night. It was a big deal. It was a big deal. They came from all over, and Brommy wanted music, and he loved music, and he said, Kevy, grab your guitar, we're going to sing some songs. We're going to have the parliamentary choir. Well, bloody hell. So anyway, I said, okay, grabbed my guitar. I suggested a couple of songs. No, try another one. No, try another one. We ended up singing Brommy's favourites, which is how it turned out. So, but that's what he was very, very good at doing. The Monday night barbecues we've spoken about. I was the assistant to him on those wonderful nights. And if you know where... Yes, and I acknowledge the current member for Myall Lakes who says, the fire extinguisher? Yes, before the fire extinguisher. And if you know where the barbecue is on level 12, on the balcony, it's sort of down the end there, and you've got the balcony, you have room for one person in front of the balcony, and to get behind and around, you've got to squeeze a little. So I squeezed behind. Brommy had his big apron on, and I can't say what was on the front of the apron, but you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so he's got a whole thing going on. There was every bovine known to man on this particular plate, with a bit of chicken thrown in as well. And anyway, it caught fire. And it was a fair dinkum fire. And we're going, shit! Sorry, Mr Speaker. We closed the lid, still no good. It started coming out the sides. And then Brommy goes, and because I was at the other end, I'd nowhere to go. I'm looking over the balcony going, oh, we're both gone here. We're both going to catch fire. And Brommy yells out, turn the bloody gas off, Kevy! So I'm reaching down to turn the gas off, and ultimately this thing goes out. And anyway, cool as a cucumber, picks it up, blows around, does the hand wave, goes, well, we've got a couple of well done here. which was just typical, always looking on the bright side of how it was. Who ordered the well done, he said. But he was a good bloke, he really was. And he was great to be around. He was energetic, he loved life, He just absolutely did everything 100%. We've heard about his past, we've heard about his profession and his passions, and to think that we all want to leave our communities in a better place, well, Brommy actually did that. He actually did it. So it was a life well lived. It really was. To Sue and family, you're often in our thoughts, you know that. And you're always welcome wherever we are. You're always welcome, you know that. And for me, level 12 in the New South Wales Parliament will never be the same.
I call the member for Badgerys Creek.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. And I feel very, very honoured to be able to stand up with my parliamentary colleagues and make a small contribution to this condolence motion to bring due honour and respect, love and admiration to our fellow colleague, Stephen Bromhead, or we all know him as Brommy. Can I first of all begin by extending my deepest sympathies to Sue, to your children, your extended family, those who may be watching online from the community. What you're hearing today is just a minutiae of the fulsome impact that our wonderful colleague Brommy has made, not only to us personally in this place, but to the community that propelled him to this place in 2011. I joined this place in the same year as our colleague Stephen, and I was on a very steep learning curve, like most of us were when you come into this place. And when I reflect back on those first years, the two things that come to my mind when I think of Stephen are his smile and his optimism. It didn't matter what was happening in this house or what he was speaking about at the lectern. He just had this sense of optimism and like this bulldozer effect that he was going to make a difference, and it didn't matter what was in the way, who was in the way. He was just going to persist and push through until what he wanted to achieve was actually delivered. And I, as a fairly timid person initially in this place, not so anymore, I took great strength from that, and I took a lot of learnings from that. And he probably doesn't even know that, but to you, to the family, to my colleagues here, I just want to attest to his incredible mentorship that he delivered as a powerful and effective local member, that he probably doesn't even know that he was such a mentor in this place. I also just want to speak briefly of my experience with Stephen when I was very honoured to be a minister in this place, the Minister for Ageing. It's now called the Minister for Seniors, but when I was Minister for Ageing a few short years ago, I'll never forget Stephen knocking on the door and just coming straight into my office and saying, "Tanya, I don't know whether you realise it, but my electorate is actually the oldest demographic electorate in the state. And as such, I put on a seniors concert at Christmas. And I'm coming to ask you for financial support for that concert." And he kind of put it in a way that wasn't a question or a request. It was just a statement. And I have to say that it didn't take a lot of convincing myself or my team to deliver. And that was just a small little insight into how passionate but how convinced he was of the investment that he wanted for his community. And I really admired that in Stephen. I really admired that. His absolute confidence that he knew what his community needed, and he was going to ask for it and call for it no matter what was in front of him. And the final thing that I want to say is actually a quote from Abe Lincoln. And the quote is this: "In the end, it's not the years in your life that count. It's the life in your years." And I think Stephen epitomises that through and through. I actually think he has lived many, many lifetimes in his life here. We've heard it said he was a nurse, he was a police officer, a solicitor, a member of parliament, a father, a husband, a colleague. He has lived many, many powerful and impacting lives in his life here on this earth. And I think that is something that the family most significantly should take great comfort in knowing, that his was a life well lived and that he is someone that we all can continue to look up to and admire and learn from. Vale, Stephen Bromhead.
Thank you. I call the member for Davidson.
Well, thank you, Speaker. It is a great privilege to be able to speak in the condolence motion of Stephen Bruce Bromhead, known to me as, like everyone else, Brommy. Now, I suspect there's some people here that are confused about why a member from Sydney's North Shore is up speaking on a motion of somebody who, as I was only elected in March of this year. But in a previous life, I worked in the Premier's office, and it was quite an interesting and amazing experience to meet so many new members after the 2011 election. And Brommy was one of those people. And he certainly left quite an impression on me as a young staffer. And the first story that many people have told, but I'll tell it from my perspective, sitting over there in the advisor's box. I was the staffer in the Premier's office who had to deliver the questions to who was asking questions for that day's question time. And if members can picture this, I know the member for Lane Cove and many on that bench remember, the government of the day had 69 seats, and that meant that the government went from all the way from that bench all the way right across all to this bench. So a very terrible time to be in opposition. And Brommy actually sat where the member for Tamworth and the member for Albury are sitting. And the reason he sat there was for two reasons. One is because, of course, the large majority. The second was, of course, 2 weeks before the election, he had a motor accident, and he was actually on crutches. And just to further why he was sitting there as well, he actually mentions it in his inaugural speech that on the first day of sitting, he actually came in on crutches in this door. And many of the Labor opposition were quite confused about, hey, buddy, what are you doing on this side of the House? And of course, being such a rugby tragic, he said that, you know, when you're short on players in the other team, of course, you loan yourself to the other team. So he certainly had humour in relation to that. But so, of course, that day I gave him his question that he had. And as we all know as members, when you pop up for a question, even though it might not even be your question because it's the other side's question, you always try to beat them. And Brommy had no hesitation in trying to get up really quick. And of course, all of us just heard this massive crack. It was just so loud. And credit to the then member for Macquarie Fields, Andrew McDonald, and the member for Port Macquarie, Leslie Williams, who, both being a doctor and a nurse, attended to Brommy. But I'm so glad that he told that story to everyone, because I think it was quite just a story where, you know, complete chaos almost took in this House. The second thing I want to say about Brommy is he had such a love for his Myall Lakes community. And if we look at his first speech, I thought, you know, people always say that when you give a first speech, it'll one day be spoken about when you're no longer here. And I thought this was a bit of a Brommy thing to say. He said, quote, "Last night I heard the member for Cronulla talk about how good his electorate is. For the benefit of members present, I think a good place and a good electorate in a metropolitan city is a contradiction in terms. So I invite him to come to Myall Lakes to see firsthand how good Myall Lakes is." It's a shame that the member for Cronulla has already spoken, because I would have pressured the member for Cronulla to say, did you take Brommy up on his offer? But he certainly loved Myall Lakes to the point that in the Premier's office, you know, as we know, we're in a coalition, so the Deputy Premier's office plays a greater role supporting the Nationals. But Brommy kept coming into the Premier's office and always talking about Manning Base Hospital and how it continually needed to be upgraded, and I'm glad that he was certainly able to do that. He did have an amazing perspective, and as a young staffer, I would have to go into Brommy from time to time to say, look, you're speaking on emotion, look, and here's your attack points. He was a great believer in using that term that isn't used as much anymore, 16 years. He would always go on about 16 years. But at the same time, he just had this amazing perspective. And I just want to echo my colleagues' comments. He was a police officer, a nurse, a volunteer firefighter, a lawyer, a counsellor, and a rugby tragic. And we've heard all the other things that he did. I mean, what a true public servant he was to the people of New South Wales and the people of Myall Lakes. As Parliamentary Lions Club president, he was just so inclusive. I remember one day he was having a dinner for the Parliamentary Lions, a huge dinner. And I was just randomly walking in Fountain Court, and he just said, "Oi, what are you doing?" I said, "Oh, about to go home." He goes, "Why don't you come for dinner?" And I said, "You sure?" He goes, yeah, just come on in. So I just showed how warm and inclusive he was. I hate to break it to the current Nats here, but he was one of the favourite Nats. And I'm so glad there's been comments about the barbecue. I don't know why I remember this, but when I ran for pre-selection and sadly, like the member for Willoughby, I wasn't successful in my first go, I actually put a picture of Brommy with the barbecue, with me, the barbecue and him. I sadly did not win that pre-selection, but I certainly be looking up that photo because I think, that certainly was the Brommy I remember. So to Stephen's family that are here today, I just want you to know, he certainly, his memory lives in all of us, and he certainly has left an impression, and his legacy will live on. Vale, Stephen Bruce Bromhead.
I call the member for Kellyville.
Could I acknowledge the many friends and family of Stephen Bromhead for being here today, and whilst a solemn occasion, can I say what a pleasure it is to speak on behalf of both a friend, a colleague, and an absolute gentleman, least of all a wonderful advocate for not only the rural areas but also for his very important community. Can I acknowledge the Honourable Member Duncan Gay in the gallery and advise him once again that I was and still remain his best Parliamentary Secretary for roads that he ever had. And yes, I am as humble as ever, Duncan. Just as by way of a bit of background, Stephen Bromhead came in here and was elected in what I call the wave of support for a Liberal National Government in 2011. It was a historic occasion for many reasons. There are 93 seats in the New South Wales Parliament. I might get these figures a little bit wrong. However, I remember that when we formed government in 2011, there were only 20 members of the opposition. 20 members of the opposition. They filled just these benches. And 3/4 of the chamber, apart from 2 independents, and I believe one would have been the member for Lake Macquarie, and I believe the other would have been the member for Sydney, I think were the only independents. I'm stand corrected on that, but I think we're the only independents.
Yep. Northern Tablelands at the time. Tallback.
Not in 2011.
Yeah, he was still here when I got here, Ray.
Was he still here?
Yeah.
God, there you go. So I stand corrected. So there were 3. The point that I make is that the Liberal Nationals took up every seat apart from 3, the entire 3/4 of the chamber. That is historic. That has never ever happened before when there was such large representation. And by virtue of that, that meant that there were certain backbenchers who were actually on the front bench, on this side of the House. And one of those people was Stephen Bromhead, the member for Myall Lakes, sitting where the Honourable Member for Lane Cove, Anthony Roberts, is at this point in time. And the reason I remember that, apart from becoming great friends with Brommy, and it's already been discussed in the House, I was sitting on the back bench right opposite, and there's a bit of rivalry when you seek the call. And you can imagine this huge chamber with all the new members of Parliament, a massive amount of enthusiasm that was here. And in the very, very early days, there were people, they were jumping out of their chairs, they were, because all they wanted to do was get a question and get out recognised on Hansard, ask a question to the Parliament, especially to the Premier. And Brommy was one of those people, and I know this has been canvassed before, but I will never, and I'm sure I don't think anybody will ever witness what happened when Stephen Bromhead launched like something akin to a missile out of the seat on this side of the chamber and broke his leg in half. And it was just, not only was it shocking, we heard the break. It was just phenomenal. Showing his great commitment, of course, to the cause of getting out of his seat, but absolutely nailed him, and we were lucky at the time. We had a couple of doctors that were in the house, and they attended to him until the paramedics got him and took him away. And I just thought it was just one of the most extraordinary things. So, he has really been a part of history in more ways than certainly than one. We got on famously. I enjoyed my time as minister whenever I could visit his electorate. I well remember, and I know this has been mentioned, I think also by the former member for Davidson who spoke earlier, we had been in opposition for 16 years, hence the Labor government had been in power for 16 years, and I'm pretty sure that Brommy was the one who initially just coined that very, very quiet phrase whenever someone got up, and it was normally the Premier or something, and he spoke about the previous Labor government, Brommy would just say, 16 years. And I'm pretty sure it was Brommy who started that. And that small quote became our mantra, and I'm looking at the Labor members who were on that, who were very much on the back of that, and every time the Labor Party got named, like this would ring out across the chamber, 16 years, and it all started from Stephen Bromhead. As Minister, I visited his electorate many, many times, and as Minister for Multiculturalism, there wasn't a great deal to do, but there was a lot of things to do on behalf of seniors and youth and volunteers in particular in his area. He never missed an opportunity to advocate on behalf of a hospital in that particular area, such to the extent that one of my very, very dear friends, who I've known most of my life, who has a holiday home at Smith's Lake, got to know Steve in his capacity as a local member, and lo and behold, the next thing you know, I've got my mate in my area ringing me saying, mate, they really do need a hospital up there, at Foster. And I said, don't you start, mate. Like, it's bad enough putting up with Bromhead every time you bump into him. Now I've got the members of my own electorate that are advocating on behalf of his hospital as well. Our chamber is the lesser for his loss. He was a great guy, and I will sadly miss him. And there was very, very rare times when someone will get as ill as Brommy will get, where they get the opportunity to come back and give the valedictory. And I, like many others, were present that day, and that will stay with me for a long, long time. May he rest in peace. Vale, Stephen Bromhead.
I call the member for Miranda.
Mr Speaker, how do you put to words the description of a man that left an indelible mark on every person in his community that he met, on every person in this place that he interacted with, and on every person that came into his life? As a colleague, I certainly can't. And to his friends and family and loved ones, I'm sure you can't either. I take this opportunity to extend my condolences to each of you for your loss. Politics is a really lonely game, and there are difficult days in here for everyone. And I think you heard from some of the speakers that COVID was really challenging for people in this building. But with someone like Brommy in this building, somehow challenging times didn't seem as tough. He is the person that went out of his way to provide words of wisdom and counselling and love and support to everyone in here. Doesn't matter which party you're from, and it didn't matter what he had going on in his day. So I am part of the class of 2015. I was one of 7 from the coalition as part of that class. And it was a little bit of a different dynamic to what the others have described as the class of 2011. Smaller grouping, less organised, just kind of had to catch up and learn to do what all of the class of 2011 had done with the mass support. And it was Brommy that went out of his way to check in on each and every one of us to make sure that we knew what we were doing, that we felt like we had support, and that we could do the best that we could do and be the best that we could be. And I'm a Liberal. He had no reason to do that, but he did, because he's one of the best people that you will ever meet. He used to tell us all the time about the little things, so the CRSs, the community recognition statements that the others have referenced, about getting the most time in the chamber for your community, about getting up and speaking, even if you didn't have the prepared words. Get that newspaper article in your hand, speak from the heart, speak to what you know, but don't waste a minute in this building. And the thing I'll never forget about Brommy was that he always encouraged us to never take a step backwards in coming forwards. That's very much true to the character of the man that we all knew. He was such a charismatic and vibrant and loved personality in here that so many speakers have spoken about the way they were roped into the Parliamentary Lions Club. Now, I got elected at 28. At first, I was, I think, sweet. And Brommy saw an opportunity to get someone that had worked in one of the big 4. I worked in tax and I was very comfortable with a spreadsheet. And Brommy obviously saw sucker written on my forehead because he roped me into doing the accounting for the Parliamentary Lions Club. Now, I had absolutely no clue what I said yes to, but it was Brommy. How do you say no? So I ended up reconciling the accounts and organising the FPOS machines and making sure all of that money, and let me tell you, there was a lot of money that Brommy fundraised for that incredibly important organisation. And you just couldn't say no to him. He was that person. But in the same way that he would reach out to you and encourage you to do things to help him or the cause that he was involved in, he would take the time to reach out to you and look after you. So the Nats have all spoken about their barbecues, which were, or are, a really important feature of their time in this place. But what they haven't said is that Brommy used to have his lunchtime barbecues with himself and Chris Galactus and Jeff Provost, and they would have them on a Wednesday. And what I really loved was being invited to hang out with the gentlemen and have lunch with them before a lot of the new Nats did, actually. So he reached out to everyone. He made us feel welcome. He would sit down and have a chat with us. And he would do everything from tell us the important stories about what he'd learnt on the journey and how to do better for our communities and the things that he'd learnt around across his various career paths. But he also took the time to put on the silly Christmas hats and sing songs and tell tales. And he brought joy to this building. He truly did. And during COVID, as I think Dougal touched on quite a lot, we did sit around in that Nationals party room and shared question time and popcorn and social distance experiences. But Brommy made sure everyone was there. If he knew that you were one of the people that was called up to be on our list of 20 people in the building, he made sure you knew there was a space for you in that room. And for someone like me who spent COVID living on their own, that was really important time. So Tanya, as the new member for Myall Lakes, has incredibly big shoes to fill. But Brommy knew exactly what he was doing because he took the time to find a magnificent woman and train her up and make sure that she knew that she could do this role, that she could be the best that she can be to continue his legacy and fight for their community. And I have no doubt that he would be so incredibly proud, as I'm sure all of you are, of the work that she does in this chamber, continuing to fight for your community and his legacy. So today, as we all pay tribute to a great man, may he rest in peace. Valet Stephen Bromhead.
I call the member for Lane Cove.
Mr Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to say a few words about Brommy. As Brommy would always say, there's a short speech and a long speech. It's my intention as father of the House of 21 years to keep mine to a short speech, and it's a thank you speech. It's a thank you to his family for giving us, Stephen, and the community, Stephen, for that many years. And can I just say that Brommy was a mountain of a man. He was a man for all seasons. We miss him here. And in all my time here in this Parliament, I've never seen a representative like him. He's a once-in-a-generation Member of Parliament. I don't think we'll see another Brommy for another couple of generations. But for Brommy, for the family, may he rest in peace. May you find peace knowing that you were married to and were part of a father and a friend to a magnificent individual. Valet.
And I call the member for Upper Hunter.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and thank you for the opportunity to make a contribution today to remember Mr Stephen Bromhead. Brommy, as a big man, he certainly made a big impact, and it's important, I think, being here today, that we do remember the man that he was. I thank Sue and the family and friends for coming, because if there's one thing that I hope you take from today, albeit as a somewhat sad occasion, it is a sense of pride. It is a sense of pride that we have for the man, and some of his ways that he worked with us, some of the ways that he poked us, some of the ways that he was our mate, and I think more than anything, that contribution that he has made to the electorate of Myall Lakes, and the greater regional New South Wales. I only had a very small time of overlap with Brommy, just a very short time, but I do appreciate those times during COVID, and you've heard it here today, during those social distancing up in the common room. And Brommy had many words of wisdom during that time. And there's one thing when we're in question time in the house here, you'll hear people can heckle the other side all day long. But when we're up there in the common room, the good thing was, in the privacy of our own little space, you could heckle both sides. And there was very many times of amusement that I can remember sitting in that couch, which is the world's most uncomfortable couch, I think, ever. Brommy was in the chair behind me.
1.5 metres away.
1.5 metres away, of course, as was appropriate at the time. First he was smart to be sitting in that chair because it was a lot more comfortable than that couch. But he was booming from the background and keeping us all amused, in amongst all that popcorn we were eating. But that sort of time, he certainly spent a bit of time mentoring us through the COVID space, but also through those barbecues, and being that bloke who pulled us all together. Because it's our family came together as the Nationals. It was a tremendous experience to be part of that, and for him to lead in that regard. So look, I think the the people of New South Wales, thank you for sharing Brommy with us. The members of the National Party, they had enormous respect for Brommy, and I think they thank you as well. And I think he'll be up there, no doubt, playing in the Lord's first 15, making sure that he's taking it to the other side and fighting as hard as he could. So I'll leave on that thought, and thank you for coming today and sharing him with us all, because he's a great leader and certainly someone who we can look up to going forward. So Vale, Steve Bromhead.
Thank you. I ask members to pass the condolence motion by standing quietly for a moment where they are. And I thank all members for that.